familiar with me, there we are. I'll just okay. So, yep, I'm Jason Murfitt, and my history goes back with Ivybridge back to 2005 autumn. That was the first time when I visited. And at that time, I was in preparation to go to Brazil. And then off we went in January 2006 to Brazil, served out there for 13 years, and then came back to England 2018, stayed there for 3 years in preparation to come to Madeira. And during those 3 years, made 12 visits to Madeira. And then on the 13th, we stayed as a family. And that's what I'm going to be telling you a bit more about what we've been doing here on the island of Madeira. But before that, I would like to share something from the Word, and for that reason, I'm going to share my screen. I'll be sharing the screen with the scriptures on, but please, by all means, follow in your own translations if you're happy with. It'll be 2 Corinthians chapter 12. So, first of all, that's the slide that begins every one of our services uh, when we're welcoming people to our services. And as we're getting started, that's the slide that comes up. I will just, in fact, this is because it's already here at this point on the presentation, but these are some ways of keeping in contact with us. I'll show this at the end as well. So we do have a quarterly prayer letter. The quarterly prayer letter has just recently come out. So if you want a bit more of a dive into the up-to-date news of what's happening in the church, those who have come, those who are coming, updates on different aspects of the ministry in a little bit more detail, then please do request our prayer letter. And I've got these short videos embedded into the PDF video prayer letter, so you can read the caption and you can tap on the picture and see a video about it. And then we've got what we call prayer clips through WhatsApp. And every week I put out a little video about our missionary endeavors primarily. But then there's sometimes other things happening, like a ladies' prayer meeting that's going to happen. We ask for prayer for things like that, or maybe a church family way day, and I put little videos in about that. So if you wanted to receive a weekly kind of a bulletin really about those things, then contact us through WhatsApp. Then also, we've got a really quite a good web page online, website that Sandro, my co-pastor, has organized, and it's really very usable. And again, you can tap on that and have a look, and any sermons we're involved in, or just some news or little profiles of different people in the church. It's all there. There's devotions and things. It's quite helpful. Anyway, so that screen I'll show at the end. Okay, so when you next see that, you know it's nearly time for bed. Okay, for I don't know, for Marmite toast and tea or something, but that'll come later. But first of all, what I want to do is read these few verses and just speak on them for a minute or two, and then we'll look at the pictures and I'll say more about Madeira. So in 2 Corinthians chapter 12, there Paul is telling us that he has received some amazing visions, and the Lord has blessed him with a great understanding, and yet this messenger Satan has also been sent, and he's really struggling with that. He's taken it to the Lord in prayer 3 times, perhaps 3 seasons of prayer, and this is what he says. In order to keep me from becoming conceited, I was given a thorn in the flesh, a messenger of Satan to torment me. 3 times I pleaded with the Lord to take it away from me. But he said to me, my grace is sufficient for you, for my power is made perfect in weakness. Therefore, I will boast all the more gladly about my weakness, so that Christ's power may rest on me. That is why, for Christ's sake, I delight in weaknesses, in insults, in hardships, in persecutions, in difficulties. For when I am weak, then I am strong. And that's what Paul wrote. And I've made some references to these verses in a recent sermon when thinking about Habakkuk and our series in the Minor Prophets. And he had great challenges in his life. His whole nation was collapsing and about to be taken over by the Babylonians, and many of his kinsmen would be murdered, probably even before his eyes, and many be taken away into slavery, into exile, and he would see this happening in three waves in the latter part of his life, and the third wave would involve the destruction of Jerusalem, the temple, and so on. That was what he had to endure, and through that, he would have been very aware of his own weaknesses. And in that message, I also made reference to Job and the sufferings of Job, and everything. He'd lost everything, just not only the material possessions, but he'd lost his health and his 10 children in one single day. It just seemed that everything was being stripped away from him, and he would have been so aware of his weakened state. And we can think about ourselves too. How often are we just aware of the weakened state in which we're in? And, maybe, you know something about this, the weakness, the insults, the hardships, persecutions, possibly difficulties. And maybe you've cried out to God too and said, God, can you just take these things away? Can you not strengthen me and just give me the victory in this situation, remove the obstacles? And that's often our first reaction. But Paul had come to the point where he could delight in these things. Now, how on earth could he do that? I mean, was he just saying it for the sake of it? Was he just under inspiration, writing what he had to write as the Holy Spirit moved him to write what he wrote? Or did he really mean it also? Could he genuinely say he delighted in such things? And if you know your Bibles and you know something of the experiences of Paul, then you know something of what uh, that entailed. The stoning he experienced, the shipwrecks, the times of hunger and nakedness, the times he's abandoned by his co-workers, the times he's imprisoned, and terrible things he experienced. His own kinsmen who he loved turning on him again and again and again, and so often on the run and hiding and being interrogated, and all these hardships he encountered. But he got to the point when he could genuinely say, I delight in them. How could he say such a thing? But that he learned the secret. And the secret's right there. It's there embedded in that text that the Lord had said to him, my grace is sufficient for you, for my power is made perfect in weakness. That's the response. When he was crying out to the Lord, and there was a specific tormentor, that messenger, Satan, that word everywhere else, messenger is used in all the Bible. It's speaking about a person, a real person, a real person. Whether angelic or human, messenger is always referring to a person of sorts. But this person was a messenger of Satan and sent to torment him. And so, yes, he wanted rid of that. But the answer he got was, my grace is sufficient for you. And he came to believe that. He came to trust that grace. And the more he needed that grace, the more the Lord provided it. As the Israelites through the wilderness would have collected the manna bread each day, gone out, a big family would have collected much. A small family would have collected a little. But those who collected much didn't have too much. And those who collected little didn't have too little. What they collected was sufficient to meet their needs. And so God's grace for each of us, for each day, is sufficient. When we need much, he will give much. When you need a little, he will give a little. But I assure you, as he assures you, that his grace will always be sufficient to meet the need in which you find yourselves. And so related to this delight of Paul's, he tells us, was that, well, the more he was aware of his own weakness, he came to be aware all the more of Christ's power. And that's what he wanted. He wanted there to be uh, manifestations of this power at work in him and through him, through his preaching, but through his life day to day. He wanted that. And if that meant for that to be visible and recognized as Christ's power and not his own, if it necessarily meant weakness, then make me weak. Make me weak. If that is what is necessary for this power to be truly seen as it truly is, Christ's. It's difficult for some preachers who maybe have 50, 60, 70 books they've authored and maybe they've got a mega church, or at least their sermons go online and they get the tens of thousands of views, hundreds of thousands of views. Very hard when you look into a ministry like that to see Christ's power and not the man's power. Now, no one should ever seek to have such a ministry. But if the Lord gives you such a ministry, then I think beware that it doesn't puff you up in some way. I get between 3 and 5 views for each sermon, not 3 or 5 thousand, 3 or 5 views. And one of them is my co-pastor putting my sermon on our website. So that's one of the views. And then there's a guy I know in Rio de Janeiro in Brazil who likes to learn English. And so he taps into my sermons too. And he's a good guy. I know him. He's a nice guy. So that counts for 2 of the views. And the other person, I don't know who he is or she is. Anyway, it helps keep me humble. But I hope that through what we're doing here in Madeira, through my ministry, my preaching, and the pastoral care I give to the flock, the little flock God's given me to care for, oh, my prayer is that Christ's power would be manifest, that whatever good I do, it would be seen as Jesus Christ living his life through me, that he's ministering, that he's the one who's using me as a vessel through which he brings glory to his own name. I certainly want Christ's power to be seen as Christ's power through what I do. That's my own personal testimony, and I trust that would be the same for you too. Whatever your ministry is, whether you are a Christian in a secular job, whether you're a parent at home, whether you're a grandparent or just a person who's retired now, but in the circles in which you move, the people that have contact with you, I trust that even through, and especially in your weakness, there would be something of Christ's power seen in the way that your life has been transformed, in the way that you persevere, in the way that you suffer, in the way that you embrace whatever difficulty comes your way, as people observing your life, that they would see there's something going on there and it's beyond them. And they might not know it as such, but I trust it's something of the evidence of Christ's power that's working in you and through you, and that he will use to draw people to you to ask, what is the reason for your hope? And that you would give it to them. And the name would be Jesus, in whom you hope. So that's what Paul wanted. He was willing to even delight in the weakness, that the power might be all the more clearly seen. He didn't want anyone to worship him. Paul was one of the greatest theologians in history. And he himself was in danger at times of becoming conceited. And he didn't want to leave a legacy where people would be worshipping him. No, therefore, he was willing to experience the weakness, the insult, the hardship, the persecution, the difficulty, that through his weakness, something of that power would be manifest, that we would conclude, okay, Paul was a great guy, but he only was what he was by grace, because we know what he was before. He was a persecutor. of the church, a hater of the church. But then God took that man and he saved him and he turned him into the Apostle Paul, through whom such wisdom came. But it was God at work in him and through him. It was the grace of God upon him and Christ's power working its way through him that left us the wisdom we have that was inspired by the Spirit. And only because of that grace could Paul have persevered and continued. And so he says, I will boast all the more gladly about my weakness so that Christ's power may rest on me. That is why, for Christ's sake, I delight in the nasty stuff, the weakness, the insult, the hardship, the persecution, the difficulty. But it was for Christ's sake. He had really come to understand the concept of dying to self and living for Christ. So all he sought to do was for Christ's sake. And we ought to have the same attitude. Whatever we do, looking after the kids, the grandkids, working hard for your maybe non-Christian boss, or studying hard, or just being that good neighbor, being that good whatever in the circles that you mix in. But it's for Christ's sake, for Christ's sake. Then come what may, you can keep going, you can persevere. The grace will be sufficient. So we really ought to be able to conclude, as Paul elsewhere concludes, for me to live is Christ and to die is gain. That's better. But for now, I'm going to live for Christ until he calls me home. Then I'll be with him. But until then, I'm going to live for Christ. May that be your anthem, your motto. May they be the words by which you live. Now I'm going to show you something of what we've been doing in Madeira and something about Madeira, but I'll pray for you first and then we'll transition to that. Lord, I do thank you for this opportunity you've given me to be able to share something of what you're doing here on the island of Madeira, what you have done in the past and what you are doing now and what we anticipate you will do, how you're going to reveal something of Christ's power and bring glory to your own name, even through weak vessels such as myself and my co-pastor Sandro and our respective wives and children, and through the members of the church of Christ Church Fuchal, through our weakness. Oh, we know already there are manifestations of your power at work. The fact we're even here after 4 years still is testimony to your goodness and your grace that has brought us here and kept us here and worked through us while we're here. But Lord, I do want to pray for my friends who have zoomed in. You know them better than I do. You know them better than they know each other. You know the weaknesses and the difficulties that they are each encountering. You know all about that. Oh God, may your grace be sufficient for each one of them and each one of the difficulties and challenges that they're encountering, whether they're physical challenges or mental, emotional, spiritual difficulties, relational difficulties in marriage or family extended. Please, Lord, may they be reminded through this time of your grace and the sufficiency of it. And may they take away from this evening, if nothing else, an encouragement to keep on keeping on and to do all for Christ, for your sake. And in your name and for your sake, I pray. Amen. This is my family. So Lucy is our firstborn. She's now 21. She was 2 years old when we first went to Brazil, and she was just about 15 when we came back to England. And then she was 17 when my wife, Lola Mikey, came to Madeira. She remained in England to do studies. She's with us right now, actually, for the summer holiday. But while we were in England between 2018 and 2021, we adopted Lola Mikey. And so they've been in our family for 5 years now. As much my son and daughter as Lucy, they just came to us a different way. So that's my family. And Mike and Lola are doing particularly well on the islands, learning Portuguese. They're very, very fluent. Mike's accent is perfectly Madeirense, the accent of Madeiran Portuguese. And Lola's pretty good. Lola's reading and is very good. Her comprehension she's working on. But yeah, we're thankful that they've integrated so well in Madeiran culture on this island. They attend a Portuguese speaking school, and that's the best thing, just to immerse them in the culture and the language. So they're doing ever so well. And they just love life in Madeira. They love life in the church. Their favorite day of all the week is Sunday, because of all the other children that come to worship with us on Sundays. So that's just as a reminder of the globe where Madeira is. You can't see it on the globe. You've got to home in a little bit, zoom in to see it. It's about 300 miles west of Morocco and about 600 miles southwest from Portugal. So it's half the distance to Morocco than it is to Portugal. Now I don't know if you can see my cursor, maybe you can. There's a little dot. I mean, Madeira's not big. I was saying earlier before the meeting began, Madeira's about the same circumference as the Isle of Wight, but double the volume, landmass, because of the mountains. It's got the second highest sea facing cliff in the world. The highest one's in Hawaii, the second one's here, Madeira. But just to the right, this little dot is Porto Santo, little island. It takes 2 hours to travel by boat to there. I was there on holiday with my family last week from Monday to Friday. Lovely time. So it takes 2 hours by boat to travel that distance. But there we are. Just gives you an idea of where we are. Now, I'm not going to go into a big history lesson, but these dudes are the ones who officially found Madeira, and just 600 years ago, just over a couple of nights in the Portuguese realm, they came, they divided it between them, and I forget which one is most guilty, but one of them decided to clear some land, make a fire, and that fire raged for 7 years, and it burnt up 90% of all of the trees on the island. So that was not a good idea. I don't know why he did that in that way, but there we are. They had to live on a ship for 7 years until the fire had gone out, and then they came back onto the land again. Um, and by the way, in that Porto Santo that you can just see in the corner here, Christopher Columbus lived there for a few years, and while he was there, he married a born again lady. And apparently, he became a born again Christian through her influence. And his old house that he used to live in is there in Porto Santo. I've been in it, very small. So yeah, I mean, we only know history so well as the historians record it, but it is very possible and probable that Christopher Columbus, you're seeing glory, thanks to his wife's witness and testimony. I'm looking forward to catching up with him and having a chat with him. So there's a little bit of history, but then I said that was when the Catholic religion came to the island, but the Bible and the gospel didn't come to the island until 400 years later, until these guys brought it. Again, I'm not going to do a lot of detail. If you want to know more, you can ask more at the end. But Dr. Cally from Scotland came in 1838, and he came with his sickly wife. The Lord used Dr. Cally to he was a doctor, so he began a surgery, and many came, he evangelized them, people got saved. So he had a church, the church grew to about up to 5,000 people. It's the greatest awakening of modern times, and according to Andrew Bonner. And so, yeah, the Lord blessed it. And then the persecution came. Hewitson came a couple of years in the middle of the persecution. He came about 1844. The Pope went to war against the Christians on Madeira, and he sent a nasty bishop here to murder them all. And the slogan was, death to the Calvinists, not death to the Arminians. It was death to the Calvinists. That's what they were screaming on these streets. And they killed quite a number of them, put many in prison to starve them to death. but nearly 3,000 escaped, and they went to Trinidad and they went to um, America, but then the majority went to Brazil and they took the gospel to Brazil. And any Christian on in the country of Brazil really has Dr. Kali specifically, and God's grace displayed through Dr. Kali and the Madeirans who escaped from him went there. They have them to thank that the gospel have arrived on the coast in the coast of Brazil all those years ago. So from 1846 until about 50 years ago, no gospel on the island. It all went quiet. The few Christians who remained went into hiding and daren't have any public meetings until about 50 years ago. And that's when the gospel began to return. And there's my friend and I, Sandra and I, stood outside the Scottish kirk there, which is still here in the island, Presbyterian church. Dr. Caddy came as a Presbyterian and he left as a Congregationalist, but the Presbyterians don't like to remember that second part. Anyway, so there is a Presbyterian church on the island, and there's a Baptist church on the island, and there's a half a dozen or so Assemblies of God, well, not Assemblies of God, but Pentecostal churches. And there's a terrible sect called the Universal Church of the Kingdom of God on the island. Most charismatic Christians go there, but it's an awful sect. I've got an interview by the son of the founder, and if you want to know more about that, he'll tell you. It's an interview I just recorded with him a couple of weeks ago. Very, very good. But yeah, sadly, that particular sect, there's more people in that sect than there are Jehovah's Witnesses in the world, in that sect around the world. And it's very prominent in Brazil, 5,000 congregations, and it's prominent in Portugal. There's about 50 of them in England, and there's a couple of hundred in Portugal, and there's a few in this island, and it's devilish. So about 50 years ago is when all these things were happening. The good and the bad started to begin on this island. But the Lord called Sandra and myself here to plant a church. So he is Madeiran. He was born and raised in Madeira. He went to England in his mid-20s about 12 years ago, something like that. In fact, pretty much when me and my family went to Brazil, he went to England, and he fell in love with this lady, Emma, and he wanted to win her heart. So he went to her church and the Lord saved him. So then he married Emma and the Lord's given him these children. And it's very much set on his heart then to come back to his own people to plant a church. Now, in June 2019, these guys came to help with an outreach. So between 2018, 2021, I did 12 trips to Madeira, most of them on my own. But on this occasion, I brought some friends with me from different churches, and I'm in contact with all of them. And still, but there's Elaine and there's Nigel. And I told you, Nigel doesn't age. He looks exactly the same as he did back there in June 2019. That's proof of it. And that was such a wonderful time. I haven't been in contact with Cindy for quite some time. And I'm ever so sorry to have to say it in this way at this time for Nigel, but David went to be with the Lord. He died just under 2 weeks ago, but he's with the Lord and he's rejoicing, and the Lord whom he loved and served so faithfully. But Cherry, man, she's going to outlive us all. She's like 84 or something, and she's still going out on evangelistic trips all over the world. She's quite a special person. There we are. So they came out, and this is one of the first services I even ever took on the island. And there we are as the mist came down and saturated us with dew, and it was quite an interesting time. But on that occasion, we had many Bibles and tracts and books to distribute. Some in that 4 days of evangelism or 5 days of evangelism, we distributed about 400 Bibles and about 400 other booklets, gospel booklets, and around 4,000 tracts. And that was a pretty amazing opportunity to be there on the streets doing that together. That rhoda banner says John 14:6. Jesus said, I'm the way, the truth, the life. No one comes to the Father but through me. And there we were distributing the words of the Lord to anyone who passed by until we got moved on day 4. And then we just spread out all the more, and even more people got to hear of such things. But we actually arrived as families to remain on the island, and our first official service on the island as Christchurch Funchal was June 2021, so just 4 years ago. And through the trips leading up to there, I got to meet a few people, and these are just a few people that we'd met on those trips, and we're thankful that then we could begin the church on the island. Now, I'm going to play this little video just in the background. It shows you this is the worship area where we meet. This is our home. It's just down the corridor from where I'm sat right now. So that's a Tuesday evening, more relaxed, informal time around the word. And I think at that time we're going through Ephesians. On that screen, that's where the words appear when we're singing on a Sunday. We have a service, 10:30 in the morning. And then we have a multinational congregation. At that time, there's about 16 nationalities among about 40 people that were coming. The Lord did reduce our numbers, particularly during 2024. A number of people left because of different reasons, some doctrinal, some because they wanted somewhere a little bit more perhaps charismatic and so on. But then those who remained, all the more steadfast. So this is the corridor from the worship area to here. This is where I'm right now. So that just shows you, it's just down the corridor where we worship. So this is what I call my sanctum, my church office, where I do my studying and reading and so on. So every Sunday after the service at 12 o'clock, that's the kitchen. There's Gadi. She's been with us about the longest, about 4 years. She's Filipino. But at 12 o'clock, that's when we eat in the area just outside. Every single Sunday, we have a fellowship lunch. And that is, what it looks like every single Sunday. And that's quite a big thing to do. The ladies very faithfully organize all the food. And so that's, a great blessing and privilege. And just the other side of that little courtyard is the schoolroom where the Sunday school happens. So we're all together for the first half of the service. And then when we turn to the sermon, then the children have their spiritual intake at a level that they're able to cope with, while we continue at the level that we're able to cope with in God's word. So that's kind of what happens on a Sunday. And then at 1 o'clock in the afternoon, then we also have a more of an informal Bible study in the main worship area, where we've just going through now an apologetics series, examining something of the other religions on the island and Christian cults, so that primarily we can help people who are trapped in them and give them a reasoned defense of what it is we believe from the Bible, and to help them as far as the Lord allows us to leave that particular erroneous gathering of which they are very much a part of. So that's the idea. And then at 4 o'clock, that's when we also have another service on Sunday for the Portuguese, and I'll say more about that in a minute. But this is Funchal, and this is our mission field. I hope your videos aren't stuttering too much with these images, but I hope you still get an idea of what you're seeing. So Funchal, there's 40% of everyone who lives on the island lives in Funchal. There's about 250,000 people on the island, about 110,000 or so live in Fuchal. So this is our Jerusalem, as it were. So this is our immediate mission field. There's a cathedral, but the immediate mission field that we reach out to, and we reach out every single Thursday. Even today, earlier today, we were out and about evangelizing. And when we go out evangelizing, first of all, we meet at 12 in my co-pastor's house, have something to eat. 1 o'clock, look at the word and pray together. Then 2 o'clock, off we go. This person I'm talking to there is a Jehovah's Witness, or at least he thinks he is. And I'm taking him through the scriptures. I'm showing him the I am statements of Jesus' claim to divinity. And he's not having it, but at least I'm trying from the word in Portuguese to help him to understand that as a reality. The Jehovah's Witnesses are very, very prominent on the islands. There's 1,700 Jehovah's Witness missionaries on the island. So that's pretty devastating, their effects of what they're doing. And they're going out and about because they know it works, giving people gospel tracts. But you see, we give them the truth. And we're not doing it to earn our salvation. We're already glory bound by grace. So what we do, we knock on the doors and speak if the people are there to speak with. And if there's no one there, we leave the leaflets in the in the letterboxes, and we engage people in conversations so far as they allow us. And on this particular occasion, here's a sleeping guy on the street looking the worst of weather. So I left a couple of tracts by his head so that when he woke up, he would be confronted with the gospel. But I didn't expect him to wake up so soon. Within about 2 minutes, he woke up, got on his feet, looked at the tracks. He was moved on by someone. He walked down the street looking at the tracks. So I felt like Philip speaking to the Ethiopian eunuch. I said, "Do you understand what you're reading?" And he said, "Well, how can I?" And if someone explains it to me, it's one of those conversations. So I explained to him his dignity as being the image bearer of God, and yet God made him. I said, for his own glory, for God's glory, you need to know who he is. And I explained the gospel. While I was doing that, this guy was watching me, and it's a Venezuelan guy called Richard. When I finished with this other guy, I walked away, and Richard came up to me. I'd never met him before. He'd been in the island a couple of weeks, 5 days, I think, actually, sleeping in a car. And I got talking to him, invited him to our house for tea. And it turns out that he's on the island for a number of complicated reasons, but he's trying to work to earn money to get his family out of Venezuela, which is a country that's a disaster zone. Anyway, from that day to this, over a year now, he's been coming to the church every Sunday, presently to the Portuguese Bible study at 4 o'clock every Sunday. He's been doing that for, since it begun, and coming to the church since May last year. So every 4 o'clock on a Sunday afternoon in Fuchal, in this plaza, we began exactly in that spot there. We began a Bible study, and people are coming to it, just a few, but it's in Portuguese. Rui and Ruben, they're Madeiran. Well, they're actually Portuguese, but they live in Madeira. And so they have been coming regularly until the last 2 or 3 weeks. Leonardo, he's from Angola. He's on the island now. So there's Richard, he also comes. But Leonardo is a lovely, wonderful young man of God. We're really excited to invest in his life. Chantal, Azari Rose, her daughter, she's South African, and she's been coming to the church on and off for the last 3 years. Alex, he's wanting to plant a church on the other part of the island. Good guy, but he's with us presently. And Mauricio, I think we lost him for some reason. Maybe his internet failed of sorts. But I can tell you, as I said, I was going to say to him, I was going to tell you this. So Mauricio, he found us. It was about end of last year. He got himself a Bible, downloaded it, and he's reading it. March, the Lord saved him by reading the Bible. And so then he used ChatGPT to say which church of Madeira ought I to go to. And this AI machine said, you ought to go to Christ Church Fuchal. So he said, okay. And he turned up. So now he comes to us every week because ChatGPT told him so. Bruna is also someone. So yeah, I love Mauricio very dearly. He's been coming to the church every week now for about the last month. And he comes to everything we do as much as he can when work responsibilities don't take him away. So he's with us every Sunday. He's got an insatiable hunger for God's word, and it's just a pleasure to disciple him. Bruna, so that flashed up here. She's a Brazilian lady, and we met her evangelizing. My wife and I met her in the most unusual place that no one would ever go. I don't know how she gets any work in her particular little shop because you could never find it. But the Lord led us there to her, and she's been coming to the church every week for the last 3 weeks now. And then there's also this lady here, Anna, who's Venezuelan, who kind of comes on and off to the 4 o'clock sessions. And there's a few others that the Lord has been bringing to us recently. This South African family, I won't go into too many details, but we're very thankful. They've come from a very, very Pentecostal background. And so they're just trying to work. Why don't you do certain things here that we used to do in our church? I've got a pastoral visit to her and her sister tomorrow to try and talk through some of those things. I'd value prayer for that because Gina and her sister Bianca are lovely Christian ladies who are just coming from a different background. And I just want to help them to look again at what the word teaches on certain things to help them to grow and mature in their faith. And I'll be taking my wife with me, and tomorrow we've got this pastoral visit, 2 o'clock. Value prayer for that, because I want them to embrace all the more Christ Church Fuchal and not be put off because we don't do things that they have expected in their past. So there's Bruna, spoken about her, and there's Mauricio also. And just in the last 3 weeks, this lady, Wendy, suddenly turned up. She's been in the island for 6 months, not knowing that there was a Bible believing, teaching church on the island. And she put it out there on the expat group, and there's some 2,000 plus people on that group. She said, is there anywhere in the island of Madeira where I can study the Bible? She had one or two responses. One was Alex, the missionary guy, who said, oh, why don't you try Christchurch Fuchal? And so she's come along and she has fallen in love with the body of believers here, even as she loves the Lord Jesus. And she was evangelizing with us today for the first time as well. So we're so, and she's English, actually, she'll probably kick me for that. She's Welsh. Okay. If you refer to Welsh people as English, they don't like it. You have to be very careful. I've made that mistake early on, and I'm going to confess now. When I was a very young preacher, I'd only preached like twice, and I quoted the famous English preacher, Dr. Martin Lloyd-Jones. Afterwards, I was told off. It's not English, it's Welsh. So I have to be careful, eh? But yeah, Wendy, Welsh, and a lovely Welsh lady she is too, who loves the Lord. Now, every 6 weeks, approximately, we have what we call a church family day away. And we got the mountain on, as we did on this occasion, for a barbecue, or we go on the beach for a beach day. The next one is in 2 weeks' time on the beach where we can, play volleyball. But what we do, first of all, I put up these banners, and the banners they have Romans 10:9. If you confess with your mouth Jesus Lord, believe in your heart that God raised him from the dead, you will be saved. And I've got it in Portuguese and got it in English, and that's our beautiful dog Lily. And so these are the tracts and booklets and things that we will put out, and then we have on that occasion it was a barbecue in the woods, and there's me giving a message in English and Portuguese.
Acho que a única vez quando Jesus se chamou Jesus Cristo, ele está orando ao Pai e vou ler em português.
Okay, so it's interesting. I was having to speak in English and then translate myself into Portuguese and then back to English. So for about a 15-minute presentation, and we always do that, a short word. We'll meet at 11, half 11, have a short word, 12 o'clock picnic, afternoon games. And whether we do it on the beach or up the mountain or whatever, that's what we sort of do in a few weeks. And they're wonderful times for us to really get to know each other all the more and love each other as a church. Now that's the airport. And the Lord has given us a bit of land beneath where the drone is flying. Now, west rather, that's where Fuchal is, just over that hill, 20 minutes away. But the Lord has given us this little bit of land. You see, this house we're in, the house church, is up for sale. We need somewhere to live. So the Lord has given us a bit of land, this bit here, and with these containers. We're going to live in containers. We're going to turn 7 containers into, well, 5 of them a house, and then the other 2 we're going to use like Airbnb, which will rent out to hopefully pay the mortgage, because we haven't got any other way of doing it. One of them is already sort of developed. This is what it looks like. We might need to sort of strip that down, and then we're going to put the 5 containers together, and then we'll be cutting out the rooms to the size we want, and so on. There'll be beautiful big 2 by 2 meter windows at the front of each of the containers. Lots of light. We like light. But it just gives you an idea so you don't feel sorry for us, okay, living in a container. But it shows you, we're going to put the 5 together, insulate it inside and outside, and point it toward the sea. And we'll be living there when it's all built and put together, probably early next year. But we're going to be starting the work in the next few weeks if everything keeps going to plan. So we need to talk with builders and mortgage banks and so on and so on. Trust the Lord to provide the money one way or the other, whether through saints or sinners. We know the Lord will provide, so we can do that. So where I showed you from the inside of our house earlier on, so we live presently on the upstairs of this building here, and you access it from the back side road. So that's where we live. Downstairs is another family, but all of this is owned by 2 South African ladies, and they're going to be selling it. So not only will we lose a place to live, we'll lose a place to worship. Therefore, next door is this house. Again, the houses, some of them are big in Madeira. And the guy who lives upstairs, he owns all of it. And this downstairs area, that shop's been empty for 15 years. Next door, the darkest glass area is a gym, a little mini gym that he's rented out. So someone's rented that out at the moment, but we're thinking that could be a church office and a Sunday school room. And this empty shop, where the front area could be a foyer with books and a reception area. It's 5 by 5 meters. And then there's a partition wall on the other side. Is this area that needs renovation for sure? But it's not a bad size area for our little church. If we would have to spend some money renovating it all, but and there's me doing a little video, so I'm basically echoing what I'm saying there. But there we are. We don't know. Maybe the Lord is going to rent us this area, or maybe sell us this. We don't know. Or maybe he's got somewhere else. But there's somewhere that's smaller than that in town for 450,000 euros, whereas that one would be about 150,000 euros. So it seems like a pretty good deal, but is that what the Lord wants? We've got a number of people on the horizon, and I'll just put this up as I finish. We've got, in case you want to copy down any of it, we've got a number of people on the horizon, and we're so thankful. We've got we've got a Russian family away at the moment who are coming back in September. We've got another Russian family coming next month. We've got a German mother and daughter who have been in Dublin for 15 years. They're coming to live here and to serve with us next month, from next month on. We have another German lady, young German lady called Maria, who's testing a call to see if the Lord wants her to serve with us full time. We've got an English couple from Lancashire who, as soon as they sell the house, are coming to be part of the church here. We've got an English, well, actually, not English, he's Hungarian, and he's half Hungarian, half Cuban. His wife's Hungarian. He and their 3 teenage children are likely, they're coming to us next year, and he'll be serving alongside us. At that point, we want a church plant, but there's a lot coming. So if all those who are coming come, we will outgrow our little church worship area as it is. So we want to not do the crisis management, but try and be good stewards and use sanctified common sense and to begin to make provision now for as more people come. We presently have about 20 or so, 25 or so. That number could double by the end of the year. And so we want to be ready for that to serve the Lord faithfully. So that there, I trust you had an opportunity to jot down any of those. Please do contact me if you want more information. If you want the prayer letter with the little videos embedded, you can learn more. If you want the weekly updates, WhatsApp. If you want to just check us out on our website, there it is. And at this stage, though, I'll pass you back to John, and he can decide what's next, how he continues in the meeting.